Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening. Hi, welcome to a new episode of Everybody Loves Bliss. I am Bliss, and joining me is my co host, Ross Cooper. Ross Cooper, say hi to the people.
What's going on, everybody?
Okay, now I was pointing this way on the camera before because that's what it looks like. So, hey, Ross, because that's the opposite side. So that must be where you are. So I don't look like I don't know where I'm pointing. Hey, welcome back. Welcome, welcome, welcome. What's going on with you?
Not much, not much.
I can see something is going on with you.
I'm about to be in a baby face bully, but other than that,
Oh, you let the beard go.
yeah, I had to. I can't do the face sweater. I appreciate the love on it though, but I can't do the face sweater, man.
That's
Eh,
the women like the
I'm,
sauce. They like
yeah,
it.
I know, but it's like without delving too deep, it's just that's what everybody's doing right now. Beards and
Oh, Lord,
sweatpants.
you got to be different.
That's what everybody doing. Let me be.
Oh,
Not to mention, got some
okay.
darn good skin over here. So why not show off the melanin a little bit? Why not show off the melanin a little bit?
Mm.
Get my Tay Diggs Tyrese on. Get all
Oh,
extra dark.
did you say Tyrese?
Can
Yeah,
we
I think.
not? Did he screw up again? Can we? Please don't tell
Mm,
me the brother did something goofy
I
again.
don't know. I don't know if you.
Okay.
I mean, you choose your poison, but okay. Okay, why not? I mean, if we're talking about the aesthetic, then okay. If
Yeah, yeah,
then
yeah,
we'll just
yeah.
go for the aesthetic. Tyrese aesthetically good to go. Okay. Okay. I mean, I like it. I like it both ways, but I was a fan of, you know, I like it both ways. I like it both ways. So listen, I'm getting ready to toot my own horn. Since our last show, there was a Golden Globe Awards that happened. And what did I say?
I
I,
mean, you were right, but that's not fair. But yes, you were right.
what's not fair?
But
Life is not fair, but what are we talking
that
about?
was just like it wasn't that. It was okay, it was that.
Okay, okay, let me go back and let people know what we are talking about. We discussed the United States versus Billie Holiday. I said that that combination, after seeing that film, the combination of Lee Daniels, downtrodden black woman story, and some good sex scenes, white folks love that. The voting bodies love it. It was going to be a win, and Andra Day won. This doesn't take anything away from her performance. I'm not doing that. I'm just saying that combination, winner, winner, chicken dinner, because she won. Sir,
Okay. Okay.
can we
So I
congratulations, Andrew Day, by the way.
absolutely
And all and
fine.
all, and all of
Fine.
the winners and all of the because truth be told, okay, I have some confessions before we start getting into it. Um, there's some shows that I haven't talked about that I really love. I actually love Schitt's Creek. I
Okay.
love the show.
I've never
I,
seen it. I heard it
I
was really funny. I've never seen it.
okay, sir. I'm gonna need you to watch Schitt's Creek. I did not think I was going to like it. I kind of begrudgingly saw it. I did. I mean, I think I had just I was flipping through channels and I just was like, I done seen everything. What am I gonna see now? And I was like, this damn show won all these awards. I'm gonna be very honest. It may have been a little too liberal for me and just the way it was described. And I was like, and there's some people that are listening to this that are hearing me say this that are questioning some of my stances on some things. I don't care. Um, I love the show. I thought the show it's funny, it's unusual, it's completely well done, well written. I think they handle subjects with great humanity in a way that doesn't feel forced on you. And I'm not going into detail, but I think overall Schitt's Creek is a really funny show.
Hmm.
Um, I love the Queen's Gambit. I that was
Still
that
gotta finish that. Still gotta finish that.
I love it. I thought it was great. I could not stop watching it. So, congratulations to all the winners. But I knew, back to Andrew Day, that combination there, she ain't done winning either.
I mean, I guess my thing is she could have won minus the sex scene, but if you take the sex scene, the two sex scenes out, it's not the same movie. So everything beyond that, she still could have won for, in my opinion. But if you take the two sex scenes out, the juxtaposition of those two sex scenes, it's not the same movie to me.
Well, okay. I don't know how we got on sex already. There you go. I
Hey,
just said, I did mention sex as part of the combination. That's the
right.
Lee Daniels formula for winner, for Black women winning. It's the formula. So, okay, but you're focused on sex now. Okay, sir. So, so here's my deal on that. I told, and I've said this before, we're not going to spend so much time because we know the listeners want us to get to it. But
Mhm.
here's the deal with that is that this, and we talked about this off camera. I think that when you tell somebody's story, when you tell their life story, it is important to stay truthful. So my only question about the sex initially was it necessary? Because I always feel like that. I always feel like when women are exposed and hypersexualized in movies, I'm wondering if that's the filmmakers, meaning the writer producers thing, and the writer has the right for that. Um, or what I mean, or is this important to the story? Now, because this is a biographical story, it's a detail of someone's life, real life. I want you to be truthful.
Right.
So again, I told you I had to watch something outside of that particular story and then come back to it. So when I
Right.
watched the biography, the documentary on Billie Holiday, the sex made sense. My only question still about the sex is how they used the particular agent, how the sex with the agent was portrayed. I don't know. And that's all. I just don't know if that, because it seemed he was the juxtaposition to all the other sex she had, the very rough. And I don't want to spend too much time on this because, if people want to hear it, the Billie Holiday episode is available for you to listen to or watch on YouTube, whatever you need to do. So, okay. But so this, I agree with you. The sex makes it, well, it tells a different kind of story and
Mhm.
it leaves out an important part of her personality. Okay. Are
Agreed.
we agree? Okay.
Agreed. Agreed. Okay.
So let's go over, because we haven't talked the news in a minute, right? What's going on? And we got some things we're gonna touch. uh, we both were like, oh, how do we do this? Let me hit this story real quick.
Take a sip.
Oh, no, I'm getting to this real quick. Mike Brown's family, Mike Brown, Ferguson.
Woo! I
Mike,
saw the headline. I didn't read the story yet, but I saw the
well,
headline.
I mean, the headlines say it all. Mike Brown's family, the foundation, they haven't announced that there's a lawsuit, but they are demanding, the family foundation is demanding $20 million from Black Lives Matter, the organization, saying, wait, Mike Brown was killed in 2014. You know that death was really the catalyst for that whole Black Lives movement, the organization, and all the questionable things that have happened with it. That's why, and I initially didn't question the organization, but soon after I did, with the murder of Darren Seals, who was an activist in Ferguson, and with some other things that went on. My later on, my stance has been, or had been, and has been, I have not been a supporter of the organization, and I've had many reasons, and I've stated those. And if you guys want to know, then you need to listen to some of my older episodes. And I've explained several times my feelings about Black Lives Matter, the organization, not the idea, not the hashtag. But I've had to come away from the hashtag just because people don't necessarily separate the two. So here we come forward, and Michael Brown's family, the Family Foundation, is demanding $20 million. And here's the rub. Last year, was the first year where the numbers for the donations were reported, allegedly. Allegedly, last year alone, not since the inception of the organization, last year alone, Black Lives Matter, the organization, collected, are you ready for this? 90 million.
A lot of change.
That's 1 year. Allegedly, the Michael Brown Family Foundation, to this date, it is 2021 now. He died in 2014. They have only received $500.
I got a lot of questions with that though.
What are your,
I got a lot of questions. One, um, how was that set up? As in, was that supposed to go directly to his family? I don't know. And then the other thing about this entire thing is, listen, BLM takes a lot of heat from a lot of racist white folk, and actually and some non-racist white folk, really. If we start this dissension amongst ourselves, it just furthers their cause. Was there no way for this to be handled behind closed doors,
no,
lawyers, something?
no, no, no,
It
we're not,
weakens it when you,
no, because you know what? Oh, okay. Oh, here we go. Because we've talked about some of the problems with that organization. That organization has been anti-family. It has been anti-Black male. It has been anti-heterosexual. This isn't what I've made up. It was in their mission statement. In fact, they caught so much heat for the mission statement. I'm not blaming anything on white racism right now. I'm dealing with the organization directly. Now, it is the white liberal agenda that has been blamed for how this organization has been run. Okay? That's very different from what we're talking about. So the mission statement was there all the time. It had been there since 2014. They only changed it, was it last year in September or the year before? But the statement was what it was. And I don't know it off the top of my head, but let me tell you, it was pro-trans and LGBTQ, anti-nuclear family, anti-Black male, specifically anti-straight Black male. That organization was built off the blood of dead Black men. Dead Black people, but specifically dead Black men. So no, I'm sorry, I'm not doing that. I'm not, because see, we at some point have got to take responsibility for these groups that supposedly represent us. And Black Lives Matter got away with a lot of stuff for too long. Didn't answer questions for too.
The reason I was saying that is because, we reached this new, I don't know if renaissance is the right word, but I guess awareness for Black people and Black causes after watching George Floyd's execution. And every company wants to be on the right side of history and donate money to BLM. And my thought process is, we don't want to interrupt that train. We want to make sure the money goes where it's supposed to go. But publicly having a spot like this is going to make donors say, well, hey, listen, y'all can't even sort y'all shit out. So I'm gonna keep my money over here because y'all can't even sort y'all shit out.
Well,
so that's what I'm like, do this with the lawyers behind closed doors and so on and so forth, because you put this out there and it's like, we finally in a space where corporations and white companies are saying, hey, we need to do something. And the easiest thing for them to do lately has been open a checkbook, cut a check to BLM. Cool, let's keep that going, but let's hold them to task to make sure that money goes where it's supposed to go.
No, we're talking about 7 years in. This is the first year, allegedly, that we have numbers on how much they've collected. That's 90 million in 1 year. How much do you think they've gotten in 7 years? 7 years. And this, please understand that Mike Brown's Family Foundation, because I don't want to say it's the family because it presents like it's just the family being greedy. The foundation has responsibilities and its own mission, okay, to do work in the community and to continue what needs to happen in Ferguson. So I don't want it to sound like the family's being greedy, and I don't think they are. $500 in 7 years.
Like, that's not even
After
$100 a
using Mike
year.
Brown's name the way that they have after using all, and let me just say, their family in that collective, that foundation is not the first to question Black Lives Matter and where that money is going. We've questioned it on the show. You and
I've been
I.
wondering, like, you know, since
So
they're
how long
nonprofit, I don't know what access to the books we're gonna have, but I've been wondering, like, all these corporations been cutting checks.
And where's that money
Where's
going? What is it doing?
I,
I'll tell you what, the 3 founders of Black Lives Matter are doing real well. We've already
yes,
talked about that.
yes.
So why should we try to save face because we don't want to be embarrassed in front of white folks, in front of company? No, no. Because I think, again, there's questions about who's behind the scenes with Black Lives Matter anyway. Has this
Agreed.
organization really been for us in the first place? Is this another way that white liberal greed, and I know people are going to be mad for me saying that, gets in the way of the movement, of the advancement of Black folks? So no, it's got to be nipped in the bud. We can't, 7 years. We've been hiding for 7 years. We've been wondering and questioning for 7 years. Now people are standing up saying, you know what? Okay, enough with this shit. We want what's going on. And we got numbers, they got solid numbers. We got $90 million for 1 year. Never mind those other years. No, I'm sorry.
Because I guess one of the things I was looking at is I don't want this, and I don't want to go too far down that rabbit hole, so I gotta move forward. I don't want this to become another instance, a bigger instance of what Dr. Umar Johnson went through with his school. It was so many questions, and now he has a credibility problem. And folks don't want to donate because, like, where to school? Where to school? And this is just a larger, much larger version of that, where people are cutting $1 million checks and they're saying, hey, there's nothing on the other side of this. And you put it out there in the public, and now BLM has a credibility issue.
Look, BLM has a credibility issue. It's had a credibility issue. Once that mission statement went up, there was a credibility issue that should have been addressed a long time ago by us. Okay, by us everyday folks. More people should have been questioning it. But the problem with us is that we have this go along to get along mentality. This idea that, well, people are paying attention and it's collecting money, it's doing good. You ain't seen, no, all you saw was mouthpieces. All you saw was a hashtag, all you saw was marches. But we've gotten into the habit of taking the crumbs because we're so desperate for change, we're so desperate for something that we'll see that mission statement was atrocious. And it was no way to defend it. It was what it was. Now it's changed since then. And I'm going to see if I can find a copy of the original because I had posted it before. It's probably disappeared. I posted it 7 years ago. I posted it probably 8 years ago. I'm sorry, 7 years ago, probably 5 years ago. And, and folks would fight, it doesn't mean anything. It meant everything. It meant everything because the organization told you what they were about and who they were about. And here we are 7 years later, and we don't know where the money resides, basically. But those 3 queer identified women, and I'm not saying this is a queer issue, but that was their mission statement: anti-nuclear family, anti-heterosexual normative behavior. Those women are doing really well, financially and professionally. And no one seems to have an answer for what's going on with the organization. And now this foundation is questioning. They're not the only foundation questioning what's going on. So no, I don't want to give. And I get what you're saying though. I because I've said this before. When we as Black folks, we fighting in public instead of like working stuff out. It looks like we can't get along, but we can't be afraid of those. Like we're afraid of any kind of stereotypical idea that makes us look bad. I'm sorry, it is what it is. We don't know. I've questioned whether Black Lives Matter, the organization, was really about us. I questioned that years ago, and I've been questioning it. So I think it's high time. I just do, and I yeah. So we'll see what happens with that. But that's I'm not surprised though. I'm not. I have to say I'm not. I'm just I would say I'm disappointed, but I'm surprised it didn't happen sooner. to be quite honest. So,
I figured after this year, after last year, I figured it was coming because you can't have all these major corporations, and as a show of whatever, as a show of our progressiveness, we're donating 5 million to BLM, we're donating 10 million to BLM. So you start racking all that up. And as a Black person thinking this is an organization about me, about my rights, about the advancement of certain things, I don't see the blueprint. I don't see the give back. You do show up when at rallies when wrong occurs, but you've racked up quite a bit of money. I'd like to know just where's that going? Is it schools, battered women? Like where's it going? And it's not just filed under administrative fees.
it's very difficult. I think what happens with us is one of the reasons why we don't want to publicly, from some of us, don't want to fall into any kind of negative tropes or stereotypes about who we are, is because for so long we've been, we have these organizations, and when we talked about it a little when we talked about United States versus Billie Holiday, and with we touched on it with Fred Hampton. We think we have, or we think we're moving forward, and it is so disappointing that when these organizations that seem to be doing well and trying to do good and make change, when they fail, there's one of us that's involved in the failure, or directly sent some kind of way to cause the demise of the organization and the movement that should have helped us move forward. Again, we saw it with the Fred Hampton story, Billie Holiday, Martin Luther King. There's somebody that looks like us that should be supporting our cause, that should want to see the movement, whatever the movement is about. If it's about anti-racism, if it's about protecting us medically, if it's about protecting and moving the wealth gap forward. We have these organizations that are set up to do. We get so excited. We put our energy behind it. We get so hopeful, and shit comes crumbling down. And when you look around for the face that causes the destruction, it looks like us. And that's painful. It's embarrassing for us. I think it feeds into this idea that we can't get along. We're crabs in a barrel. Even though that's true of other organizations too. When you see corporations go down, white corporations go down because greed is another white person who's involved with the corporation that's trying to steal, or in other communities. But for us, it feels different. We feel like we're under a microscope, and we fight. We're fighting so many systems that are against us. And I think that what you're saying, I think that's the fear of that. And that's why we always want to be quiet. Let's try to solve this. We don't want to be in public, but we can't worry about that now. We've got to address issues as we see them. We can't, this went on too long.
Just in a year, you got 90 mil. Where'd it go? That's a legit question. Like that's not accusatory. That's just asking a question. Like you got 90 mil.
Accusatory if you ain't got no, if we waiting on this is the first year we've seen numbers and you have not shown your work. I'm sorry, I'm already closed.
Like I'm just asking, like, where the money go?
What you're doing. It's like we don't have any friends, not even amongst ourselves. And speaking of not having any friends, I'm going to bring this next story to us first before we go into our main story. A woman named Jane Elliot. Jane Elliot, for those of you who don't know.
It's another one. Just damn, man.
Okay.
You too.
Well, but this goes back to what we've talked about on the show before. So let me explain who Jane Elliot is. Jane Elliot is an educator. She's an activist. She's a white activist. Jane Elliot is a senior citizen who is she's 87 now. You've probably seen her somewhere on the news. She's a little white lady with glasses who has been at the forefront, or so we think or thought, of the movement for racial equality. She was dynamic and has been dynamic in ways that we've not seen. She's challenged the white status quo in ways that we had not seen before. She has been touted by every, pretty much every Black person involved in awake and woke and involved in activism as a white superhero of the activism movement because she's moved in a way or demonstrated her commitment to activism and inequality that we've not seen. And she's challenged her own people. She's challenged white folks. And that was really important and is really important because white folks hear things differently from their own.
Mm-hmm.
And Jane Elliot has known that. And she's been doing this work since what, the 60s? She's been out there. There's footage of her. And she did a very interesting experiment, the blue-eyed, brown-eyed experiment with Black and white children, which caused them, without dealing with race, to understand the dynamics of racism and prejudice. It's pretty dynamic to see. You can Google it. Jane Elliot, blue-eyed, brown-eyed experiment. So Jane Elliott's been on Oprah. She's been on Phil Donahue. Just recently on Red Table Talks, T.I. has talked about how grand she is and how wonderful she is. And we've all felt very, in a country and in a world that we don't see commitment from other folks, specifically white folks, to the cause of equality. She's been a superstar.
She's
What
I guess, the template for white allyship.
the prototype, definitely. But now, recently, Jane Elliott did an interview with a not so well known. Was that a podcast? It was like a hip hop podcast. I need to grab the name of it. I don't think it matters, but I mean, not to. I don't want to say don't. It doesn't matter because it's another podcast. I'm not being shady. You can find the information. It is the Hip Hop Uncensored podcast, and no shade to those guys on that podcast because in the podcast community, we are supportive of each other. They probably don't know who the hell we are, but I just want to say I wasn't saying that to shade them. So it is the Hip Hop. Let me grab the name again.
Hip Hop Uncensored?
The Hip Hop Uncensored podcast that she was on. And the question of reparations came up. Okay.
God damn it.
Here's what I have said. And I'm not, this isn't a show about I told you so. But this is the third I told you so that I guess I'm getting into. I started with the Andrew Day and the award, then the Black Lives Matter, and here I go with this one. I want to say I myself was surprised by Jane Elliott's answer, and I'm very disappointed. But it goes right back into what I've said before, is that allyship, it gets real interesting. The most dynamic ally, the most committed ally, the most faithful ally, I have said to you, when the question of reparations and real equality comes up, you're going to see a lot of them fall by the wayside. They're going to waver, they're going to have questions, and there's going to be uncertainty that you have not seen before.
Because it's a different ask. It's a different ask.
What do you mean?
Here's what I mean. White allyship is very easy when the ask is equality. What we're asking for is equality. What we're saying is, if I am white, I want my Black friend and his kids to be treated the exact same way that I'm treated. That is an easy ask. The trick, though, is it does not account for the past and the history that set this system up the way it has. So it's one thing for me to say, hey, I'm going to pull you up. I'm going to stand by you because at the end of this, we'll be equals. The moment you start having a reparations conversation, now the ask is different. Now it's, I'm going to not only pull you up, but take part in something that will actually make you financially surpass me.
Well,
Whoa,
no, 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 no,
whoa.
no, 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 no. This isn't about Black folks trying to surpass white folks economically.
Of course
So
not.
that is right. So let's be clear about that. This is not about that. It's about being made whole.
Right.
It
This is about
is
being
because
made right. Mhm.
I think that what happens is understanding what will make equality is not trickle down effects and economics and that kind of trickle down doesn't do shit.
Yeah, we saw that in the 80s.
That doesn't
Reaganomics. Yeah.
that's not that doesn't equate equality. And I think there is a misunderstanding of what equality means. Equality has to make whole. It has to, because we can't be equal if there's this huge gap. Like you have to, if you're going to, let's say, let's take education, which is easier for liberal folks to swallow. If we're going to fix the school systems and make education equal, there's got to be more money put into certain areas. We can't, we've said this before, you can't, this is not about who pays the most taxes or what taxes are paid. Because here's the truth. A lot of times in areas with money, you pay a lot less for a lot of other things. Let's say car insurance. If you live in a suburb that's white and considered low crime, your car insurance is way lower than if you live in a city. Because poverty pays more a lot of times. Let's be real
Right.
clear about that. We get people complaining about, oh, I pay more in my taxes. A lot of times you pay less because you get bigger tax breaks a lot of times. The things that you pay for every day are cheaper. Your interest rates are lower, so you pay less. So equality means examining all that shit. It means that the school systems have to be equal. That means because the school systems are so shitty in certain areas, you're going to have to siphon more money into those schools to make them right,
Agree.
to make the education equal. So when we look at it
Agree.
from that perspective, people, they still are shuddering, but they can hear that. Now
Okay.
we're talking about the privileges that you have enjoyed for so long. So let's make communities equal, because you've redlined Black communities. You've got to pour money into those communities. You've got to build them up and make them better. But
And
but
still,
that doesn't happen unless white people get to gentrify. White people are okay.
right,
Well, as long as we can come in there and get a piece of it.
as long
Doesn't
as you
mean
can go
we
to
get a
Starbucks.
piece of it.
But think about what you just said though. Average suburb white guy. Everything you just said is an easy thing to do. That's cool. I'm totally cool with that. The
They're not totally
second it becomes,
no, they're
which is
not
scary,
totally.
the second it becomes, so wait, you gonna get them a check because they Black? That's where it
Right.
shifts.
That
We
gets
can
to be
change things. We can build schools. I
wait.
want to make sure when you turn in your application, you have just as good a chance of getting a job as I do. The second it becomes, wait, you're getting a check because you're Black? Oh, let's
Well,
see if you're still an ally then.
well, let's tell the truth about those things, though. The things that they've supposedly been okay with, you fix the school systems, all the teachers are white, though. That's what happens. We put money into the schools, we elevate the schools, and all of a sudden the Black teachers don't qualify. That happens. Or the neighborhoods, yeah, they'll put money into the neighborhoods, but they're buying into them all of a sudden. And then all of a sudden the prices are raised and Black folks got to move out. Then we look at it's called gentrification. Those things have got, so this is how it's worked so far. You're right. Reparations is too direct. It is, you're getting a check. We're going to put it in your hand, and there's no way for us to get a piece of that or to manipulate that, because everything we've talked about has been manipulated. And they've been somehow, when it's supposed to benefit the Black community or Black folks, white folks have been able to come in and take a part of it and overtake it. That's how it's worked.
Affirmative action, yeah.
Everything. Remember when we said, looking at Biden's lovely contract, people of color does not mean Black. Minorities does not mean Black. Minority means women. People of color mean anything that ain't white. So
I will say this. I'm sorry, Jane Elliot. I will say this.
we need to answer the question, but go ahead.
Oh, my
what
bad,
he
my bad.
said. Mhm.
Real quick. It does give a little bit of credence to what for Obama said as far as reparations not being a non-starter when he was president. And I read the statement he made,
Wait,
and
say that again?
it does give a little bit of credence to what Obama said as far as reparations being a non-starter
You
when he
love
was
bringing up
president.
Obama.
I mean, it just
Name on your tongue and on the show, but that's okay.
um,
Go
because
ahead. It ain't always got to be me.
no, it just I read the statement he made on the Renegades Born in the USA podcast.
Oh, so you have listened. Okay.
Nope, did not. I just read the statement. I refuse. That's my bag though. But no. But he mentioned like it really would have when it was even broached, and I'm paraphrasing here, all he kept hearing about was welfare queens and poor undeserving people and so on and so forth. So the second he even tried to think about, well, what about reparations? He got met with all kind of backlash from white folk like, oh no, absolutely not. We're not
Okay.
giving these
Wait,
people
wait,
money.
wait, 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 wait. Hold up. Hold up. Now see, now you got me in here. Um, I'd like to know when Obama broached the subject of reparations. When did that
He didn't
happen?
he didn't say when, he just said during his presidency. So
Okay, when did that happen? Because again, here's another show your work. I'm not aware of that conversation. Come on now. Come on. Because see what I read that as, and I only saw the statement in passing, and I'm moving things around, people, sorry. Is that what happened with that was that was his answer for why he did nothing in terms of reparations and why there isn't one thing we can point to that our dear Black president did specifically for Black people. And I give Obama, let me just say, I think that I've been fair with Obama. I think that I've looked at him fairly. I've talked about, the greatness of his optics and given him his, he's rated high on the swag, scale, all of that, great, wonderful. But when it came to handling stuff for Black folks, he gets an he gets an F. I'm
get to wave your
sorry.
hand like,
Okay, a D minus. Okay, a D
yeah, you
minus.
get to wave your
And
hand on
and
that.
and I don't want to hear about why you didn't do something when you can't show your work. When I do not see the effort that was ever put in where the subject was ever broached. And that's the problem. So, yeah, you can say anything now. What is it, 4 years later? Almost 5 years
Yes.
later? I
Mhm.
don't care because I want you refer back to what you mean. Point to that point where you were trying to have that conversation. Show me on the books. Show me this revisionist history. I don't want to hear this. I can't hear it because there's no truth because I've been looking for it forever. I've been looking for you to say something because because here's the thing, if Obama had made the attempt and then we could see clearly that that they were beating him down about it, okay, brother, you tried.
Right.
It does not exist.
And I will go even further to say, if you make the attempt, you introduce legislation, executive or whatever you got to do, put it out there, and it crashes and burns miserably, we'd be able to see laid bare who was with it, who wasn't with it, and had their asses voted out by now. So now that your VP is president, guess what we could have did?
Let me adjust my light on that one.
But okay, brother, you told us you couldn't try because it was a non-starter because you got
See,
way too much pushback.
here's the difference. I could not try is different from I tried and this is what happened. I don't give points for you thought about it maybe. I thought about it, but when I thought about it again. Now I'll try to hear that. Anyway, listen, Jane Elliot, we never said what she said. She was basically like first of all, her answer made no sense to me. It was like a rambling of, let me sum it up. No, I don't support reparations for Black folks. Basically, that was the answer. But it was kind of mixed into this answer of, well, if we're going to do reparations, let's start with the Native Americans. And we know that the Native Americans really came from Africa and they built this and then their land was taken. And yeah, so let's go there first. And I'm for it if we start with the Native Americans and we tell the true history about who they were and we figure that and I'm gonna cuss. What the Sam fuck? I'm sorry. I'm sorry if you offended by I just was like this convoluted, bizarro answer that you gave. If the Native Americans are Africans and Africans were stolen and black folks at the end of the day, you're saying it's all black. What the hell are you saying? Because she knows the history. She knows about the $5 Native Americans. She knows that if we broach that subject, we got to decide who's Native American and who's not. Because the $5 Indian, remember when there was land and reservations passed, that white folks started buying their Indian identity for $5. We know about that, right? The $5. If you don't know, then you need to learn a little bit more about the American history. I'm not going to give you a history on the $5 Native Americans, but $5 Native Americans basically are white folks that decided they wanted to be Native Americans so they could benefit. That's what that is. So how in the hell would you what's insulting about her answer is that she knows how convoluted that would be. She knows that introducing that first of all, Native Americans, I am sorry for the treatment for Native Americans. I'm not discounting what has happened with Native Americans, but I also, understanding that history, know that that's very mixed. There's a lot of layers to that, and that does not answer the question for African Americans. We can show our work. Here's the thing. Remember, I said people need to show their work. We can show our work. The fact that we have to talk about the disparities in wealth shows our work. Okay.
Yeah,
So
the sad, I'm sorry. I was gonna say the sad reality of it is, listen, boys and girls, in the oppression Olympics, black folk in this country are far and away the gold medalist. And that's not something I'm happy about, but there's no other ethnicity. And I understand that, I've come across Jews who've tried it. I come across everyone, what about the Irish? What about Chinese? I get it. But the problem we're gonna have always is, I hear the stories. My father came here with $2 and he was treated like shit. Your father came here. As long as the story starts with, we got dragged here in chains, yeah, there's that.
And what a contradiction. That's the other thing is, what a contradiction that a woman who has supposedly her life's work has been about getting equality and erasing racism. That it's not just about the education in this country, the education gap. That it's not just about housing. That it's not just about when you challenge white people for why they grab their bags when a black man gets on the elevator. It's more than just the white guy doesn't want his white son to take the black girl to the prom, or he doesn't want his white daughter to date the black guy, or his biggest fear is that he'll have a black grandchild. That it's about finances. Jane Elliot she's not stupid. She understands the wealth gap is huge. So when asked about reparations, to be able to not as eloquently speak to that as she's able to speak to everything else, again, it only proves what I've always said. When it comes to full equity, when it comes to wholeness, and when it comes to money, all bets become off. All allyship goes out the freaking window. And if this is not the perfect example of that, this woman is 87, has been doing this work since the 60s. And all of a sudden, when we talk about making Black folks whole economically, this is the first time when we have had a conversation about race that this woman has wavered. And this falls right in line to what I have said allies do. And that is why it is very difficult to have allyship and to trust it. Because as long as there's some kind of way that white folks can maintain power and finances and economics are it, they're fine. All that other stuff that we can play around with and manipulate with, oh, we'll build the educational systems. You'll take all the jobs. We'll put money into the communities. You'll gentrify them. We'll give tax breaks. You'll give yourself a bigger tax break.
Yeah, that's and to your point, show your work. This one number to me is the most stark and painful to see. As of, I do believe 2018, 2017, the last numbers I saw, the average American white family has a collective net worth of $117,000. The average Black family is a tenth of that. Now, when we're talking net worth, we are talking about what do you have after all your bills are paid? What's in your savings, checking, stocks, all of that, your collective net worth, not how much money you make. We're saying after everything is paid, what do you still have? The value of your home, so on and so forth. 117,000. And the average Black family is a tenth. 17,000 for those who are not good on math.
I didn't know it was that much. I thought it was much less. I didn't think that that number was correct. Are you sure it's a tenth? Because I thought it was like a fifth. I'm asking, are you sure? Because I think
last I saw was, like I said, last I saw it was 17,000. And the average, my math was off. I'm sorry. 17,000 and the average white family is 117,000. So yeah, I'm sorry. Moved decimal place to wrong place. My apologies.
No, but I thought the average Black families was like more like 1,700. Right. That's less. That's really less than a fifth. But I thought it was. But I'm you know what, we need to check those numbers, but it's staggering. The difference is staggering.
Right. And all of the other things are what created that. The redlining, the screwed up school system, the war on drugs, welfare, all of those things.
Yep. Lack of access to life insurance, all those things. Yep.
When that number closes, then we can talk. But there's a lot, this is where the reparations comes in all the places. And yes, physically handing me a check is included in that because we need to close that number.
Let me give you a number that I am clear about. I don't know what this breaks down in terms of the numbers like we were just trying to break down. It is 0.5% of the entire wealth. So Black people own 0.5% of the accumulated wealth in the United States, 0.5%. So
15% of the population on a good day, 0.5% of the wealth.
And I'm going to tell you this, I don't believe that those numbers about population are correct. I think that Black people's numbers are much higher than that. I think that idea that you're only 13 to 15% of the population doesn't make sense when I look around and I'm roaming around the United States. I don't think that those numbers are accurate. And I think that the numbers have not been accurate because we've not participated in census and for a lot of different reasons. And I think that, and I'm not going to go deep into that, but I think our numbers are much higher, which makes the lack of wealth even
more staggering.
So let's talk about this idea of, because that's all that needs to be said about Jane Elliot. The point I have been making about where allyship ends, it's always going to end with money. And it is sad that even with someone like Jane Elliot, who for years has been touted as probably the grandest and greatest white ally Black folks have had, here, a woman at 87, when asked about reparations, wholeness for Black people, essentially, she wavered on the answer and gave some kind of convoluted answer that basically sums up that no, she doesn't support reparations.
Nah, we good.
Right. So now for you, does that, before I go to the next subject, what do you think about, so now, does that discount the stuff that you knew about her before?
No, it doesn't.
How do we even deal with that is the question. I don't necessarily.
It doesn't discount everything she said because everything she said is true. The work she's done has been very, very vital. So it doesn't discount it at all. It just means, all right, there's a part of this journey to Black equality and Black indemnification that she's not going to roll with us on. We shouldn't be surprised at this point. So when
Is that okay?
legislation comes up, I think it's not a matter of okay. I think it is what it is. Because again, a lot of Black people who believe they have white allies are going to be very surprised if legislation actually comes up and you have to vote, or legislation comes up. There's going to be a lot of people, white friends, very disappointed at that moment.
Do you think that at this point we need to stop inviting her into Black spaces? I do.
I was gonna say,
I think her
I
work is
mean,
done. Her season is over.
I was gonna say, I don't necessarily know she needs to be in Black spaces anyway, because for her, that's preaching to the choir. She need to be in white spaces anyhow. But I get your point.
Exactly. And I think that and maybe that's the lesson for us as Black folks, is that we've invited her into Black spaces so many times. She's been invited and she's been touted as this, again, this grand example of allyship. I think her season is over. I think you're right. Let her go into white spaces and preach whatever she can, whatever, equality that she can get to, which is a little bit better than what we've seen with average white folks. Let her work whatever she can do, but we know it's not enough, because that right there, the limitations that she has in terms of seeing us whole, it's 2021. We can't afford to have people that want to stop the progress. So I think that this is her season is over. No more invitations into Black spaces. No more touting her. No more inviting her in. I'm sorry. That's my feeling, and I think that's the lesson.
Okay. I guess I want to be cautious not to throw the baby out the bathwater. Like,
I'm not
all
throwing
right.
it out. I'm saying, I think she can still do work in her community, and still, but we need to move forward. We've been
Agreed. Oh, absolutely.
too long, and we can't continue to make excuses and overlook the truth of who people are in these spaces. You don't do it with Obama, sir. So we can't do it with Jane. I mean, it's not, what she's done in the past, and it's been significant. And I still say, if you've not seen the experiment she's done with the blue eye, green eye, and the work she's done, that you need to Google and watch it. It has been profound, but the season is over, because we've got to move past that now. We cannot not have this discussion on the table, and we are moving for wholeness. And those
Right.
of us who are moving with wholeness can't have somebody going, I'm with you, but you can't have that money. Sorry. Just, it is what it is. She made the decision, and we're going, okay, that's what you over there now. So, okay. So we've been talking about the the oppression Olympics. Apparently, and we're gonna, you and I have waited to have this conversation, because the last thing you and I want to do is appear insensitive. This is not about political correctness, because I don't care about political correctness. I do care about humanity, and I do always want to be fair. Okay. I don't want to be insensitive. And sometimes I am, where it appears that I am, because the truth hurts. So there's been a lot of conversation lately, and I did bring it up a bit when we talked about Biden's first executive orders, about the executive order that he put in place to fight xenophobia against Asian Americans. I found it curious. I've said the reasons why I found it curious. One is, to me, in your first 100 days, or your first, the urgent executive orders that you would make, seems like you would be doing them for the people who voted for you and got you in office, and who you made promises to. Seems logical, right?
It does. It does.
Instead, I didn't see anything specific for African Americans. Okay, you recognize that African American people, women specifically, got your ass in the office, Biden. You ran on a platform was his the Lift Every Voice, or his was
Lift
platinum?
Every
One of
Voice
them,
plan. Yeah.
one of
Lift Every
them,
Voice plan.
one of those, yeah. So why would you not address that first and foremost? Okay, you didn't. I called it out. You called it out. No surprise, because Black folks didn't have the ask. So, okay. So now it seems like after the executive order came out, and there were a lot of folks that were questioning what this was and why it was necessary. Now there are all of these stories that have come out about violence against Asian Americans. And I have to say that it was a bit surprising, the timing, because to me it seems like you would have seen the intensification of those crimes happening around the time Trump was on that China virus rant, and when the media was calling him xenophobic and saying he was being insensitive to Asians. You would have thought the rise would have happened then. Like you would have seen all these news stories happening then, like, oh, Trump says this and now the Asian community is fighting such as. It didn't happen. It seems like here we are months later after this executive order, and I'm saying all this because, yeah, I'm questioning the timing. I'm just going to tell you right now, if you think that that's what I'm doing and you're wondering, don't wonder. That is what I'm doing, and I'm telling you it's what I'm doing, because I'm a thinker, and I can't play this game like I don't wonder. I'm not saying definitively anything, but the timing is interesting to me, that all of a sudden we're seeing these news reports about violence in the Asian community or racism in the Asian community. So this is one of those stories we're trying to be careful with. But when I went to do the research, the intensity of what I'm supposed to believe is happening doesn't match the information that I'm seeing. I'm seeing reports of, I saw reports of, sporadically of Asian Americans, older Asian Americans being pushed down. Let me just say something to you so that anybody listening to this understands. I'm hypersensitive about elders. I have an older grandmother who is almost 100, 95 years old. I appreciate elders because I have been saved many times by for me, my grandmothers have been very, very important in my life. I am hypersensitive to any elder. I do not support any kind of elder abuse on any level. And you and I have talked about this off camera about our feelings about elders and that thing. So because you know how I feel. So when I saw the stories about elderly folk, anytime I see a story about an elder being abused, it infuriates me. So I was infuriated by the stories of someone harassing any elderly person. So I saw those stories. I did see the stories of, there were two that I was able to find about the two Asian in two different places. One was in Oakland, I think one was in San Francisco, one being knocked down and one being robbed, and he later died from his injuries. So I think one person was 91 and one person was 87. And I do feel for that. And I am sorry that happened. But when I went to look at the stories to get more and more information about this major rise in violence against the Asian community, there were some really curious stories that I saw. You and I talked about the story with that came on CNN about the reporter from CNN saying that
Right.
she was attacked. Now, there's a 7-minute news clip that CNN has on YouTube that says CNN reporter, what is it, flustered after three attacks
Attacked 3 times, 1 hour.
three
Yeah.
times in one. And when we watched the story, and I don't discount what people feel in terms of how they respond to things happening to them, but the story was one man came to her, and this allegedly, these are what the reporter is saying, in an airport. All of this happened in one trip on to in an airport. I think it was in New Orleans. She said that one man came up to her and said something, ching chong, hi, hi,
Said hello in Chinese
said
and
hello in Chinese and then said
said an
ching
insult.
chong. Right.
Right.
The hello wasn't, the ching chong is an
Yeah.
insult. Um, And then he walked away. And then she caught up with him later. This is the story. And I'm going to pull her name in a minute. She walked away, or he walked away, and then she found him later in the gift shop and addressed him and said, "Do you know how racist that was?" And he simply said to her, "I don't know what you're talking about," and walked away. Then she said at some point later in the airport, she's with her producer, and another man came up to her and asked her if she spoke English. Now, I don't what okay, you know what? Let me just tell the story first. So she said, "Of course I speak English. Why would you ask me if I don't speak English?" And got into it. And obviously, I don't think he did anything but kind of there wasn't really an exchange. It didn't was there was an exchange. He kind of walked away.
But
Again, another walking away, but she was supposedly sitting next to her producer at this point when this happened. And so later she felt so offended by being asked if she spoke English that she finds a police officer and tells him about the racist attack. And he tells her it's not racist. So that's the third attack. Uh, you want to hit this before I do?
I mean, it's a tough line to walk, and I think speaking for myself, sadly, I am my idea of a racist attack has been colored by the things that I personally endured in the history of Black people in this country. So when I hear attack, I think dogs, I think fire hoses, I think mob beatings and lynchings. So my scale of racist attack is a little skewed. I can't discount what she's saying because she said the dude asked her if she spoke English, and she was like, "Legit, why would you ask me that?" And he said nothing, and then according to her, walked off mocking Asian languages. So I'm like, I can't tell you how to feel. I'm just saying my idea of a racist attack, a little different than what this one person's idea. I think that that headline was really misleading. That was really misleading. But again, maybe it's because of my own personal experiences in the history of what racist attacks look like when the person on the receiving end happens to be Black. Like I can't, like you said, attack. I'm like, damn, yo, they beat your ass. Did they tie you up? Like, so somebody asked you if you spoke English, and I get that was definitely being an asshole, but racist attack.
The,
Again, my scale is skewed.
the problem with this to me, and again, I'm with you. I can't tell you how to feel about any situation. I can't tell anybody how they should feel about it. But I'm not, see, this is not just about questioning her story and what she interprets as attack, because I do question it. But if that's what she feels, that's what she feels. And her name is Amara Walker, by the way.
Mhm.
My question is, so let's go back to the first attack. So the gentleman says, ni hao, ching chong. That's what he supposedly said. And and I recognize I don't know if someone saying ni hao would be considered, but I know that ching chong is, and so I can't take anything away from that being a racist statement. I understand that. And you address them, and that I'm just it's just interesting how, first of all, these attacks somehow didn't escalate. It is unusual when you are being attacked by a racist, and I can tell you from the Black perspective, when somebody's verbally attacking you, that generally escalates. It's interesting how she addresses it and they walk away very calmly, seemingly, in these stories that she's telling. That's unusual in itself. I'm just going to say that. The other thing that I found unusual with these stories is that for the second one, we don't know. She says that the gentleman never explained why he asked her if she spoke English. She never identifies the race of the men when she's reporting.
That's
Any
again
other
not only.
time, no,
Mhm.
no, we're gonna talk. We're gonna talk. She never says the race of the men. She never even says the second man that asked her if she spoke English, if he was himself American, and whether he had an accent, or if English was his first language, because in an airport, it is important to note that I've been asked, depending on where I was, if I spoke certain languages. In France, I'm asking anybody who I'm walking around, do you speak French? What language? I don't care what you look like. I'm not thinking if I step to an African person in France, oh, don't ask the African or don't ask. I'm asking whomever. And let me tell you something. In a foreign country, if I'm a foreigner and I see someone that looks like me and I need someone to speak English or a certain language, I'm probably going to go to the person that looks like me first. So she never identified the race of the men asking her, which I think is important. Also, she says her producer was with her. My producer, she never says the producer's name. The producer is not there. And I'm not telling this story to discount what she's saying. I'm just saying that there's just so many things that are unclear. And with all of those questions, here's my point I'm getting to. CNN thought with that little bit of information that she gave, without filling in some really important details, they gave that almost 8 minutes of time. Do you think for 2 seconds, if I had had those same situations happen to me in an airport and I called CNN or any news station, that they would have given me 8 full minutes to describe those situations without questioning everything about what I was telling them, every detail?
I mean,
let's be honest.
Yeah, no, I don't, and that's the other thing. It goes to the other article that we looked into with the Oakland PD, and there's going to be a task force and a lot of resources allocated strictly for investigating and looking into crimes against Asians. And I don't inherently have an issue with that. Like, okay, that's what you got to do. But did crimes against, and it's going to sound how it's going to sound. Did racist crimes against Black people become passe?
Well,
Like,
was that, and it's also this thing about increase in violence or increase in crime also was in line with the increase in crime of 2020 last year, because violent crime went up 20% all across the board. So when I'm looking at the numbers, it seems like the crime is in line with the numbers. The other thing to consider, and I was considering when you and I talked about when it came to businesses being closed and businesses being open. Well, there are a lot of Asian businesses that exist in certain communities. A lot of them have businesses in Black communities. They own the business. They were able to keep those businesses open. A lot of them, they could choose to keep them open. And if the state allowed it, then they could control, then they had more control over having employment. Meaning, if your state allowed your restaurant to be open and you have a Chinese or whatever kind of Asian, I'm not stereotyping whatever kind of restaurant, then you could stay open within the parameters of your state. So if you had a business and you weren't relying on going to a job, then you probably, with the increase in crime, a business like that is going to see an increase in crime. Like in stores had to put paper towels and certain things away because there was an increase in those things being stolen.
Right.
Okay. So you're seeing an increase in crime all around. So I'm just I'm posing this because I honestly I'm looking through all kinds of stuff to make it make sense. And I'm just not wasn't seeing, even when I went to what is the Trevor Noah, he did a whole thing on.
Oh, I saw it. I didn't get a chance to watch that. I saw that. I was curious where he was at on that.
Well, he had a conversation with an Asian gentleman about crime and how serious it was, and that was like a SNL skit. It was like they were making a joke of it. So if this is something that's really, we need to talk about it and be real clear. But here's the other thing that comes up for me is that Black folks have jumped on board to this Stop Asian Hate hashtag. Like, we are on board with it. Essence Magazine did a whole thing recently where they have Black actresses who are proud of their Asian heritage to help support this narrative, to help support Stop the Asian Hate. I'm going to challenge you, Black people, and y'all going to be mad at me. But I need you to understand that we have had a conversation, you and I, on this podcast, because we get amnesia real quick. Our short-term memory is real bad, Black folks. I think that just a few months ago, if you remember when Corona was at its height, um, and the reports were that black black folks were getting the virus at higher rates and it was affecting us, and there was that media thing about black folks and we're more susceptible to corona. It was interesting to me that as the news reports were coming in, and they didn't get the kind of shine that they should have, about how black people in China were being put out on the streets. They were being put out of hotels. They were not able to get medical care. Um, all kinds of vicious and horrible things happening to Black people, specifically, not people of color, but Black people. And I did not see any support from the Asian community. And let me say generally, we did not see the swarms of support and stop the Black hate and stop the violence against Blacks. The Asian community didn't come out. I think that you also need to remember that the guardian for George Chauvin, while he was killing George Floyd, the officer that really was the one out in the forefront who was challenging the folks who were trying to assist, who were attempting to get closer to George Floyd, the officer who stood there and allowed that to happen, who we saw directly on camera, was an Asian officer. Um, there have been reports and issues with the Black community and Asian community that have gone on for a very long time.
I mean,
So it's not that I'm insensitive, but it is interesting to me that racism becomes real to Asian people when they perceive themselves as the victims. And let me go back to what you said about the studies about looking at the violence against Asians. Part of the violence includes shunning.
how do you measure that? I'm not being asked. I'm like, how do you measure that?
Shunning is
How
included.
do you measure that?
I guess if you roll your eyes, or I don't know what that means, but shunning is included. Um,
Still the worldwide leaders in that, Black folk, but I'm sorry, continue.
that's included. And
I,
I just want because we're talking about this because we got to bring some reality to what it means to be Black and what it means to be a person of color, and how what the differences are on how you get treated and what you have to prove when you're Black and you are experiencing racism. It is written into the codes for us. It is written into the
man,
system for us. But you can be a CNN reporter and someone say something to you and walk away without it being a back and forth, without somebody physically hitting you, it doesn't even seem like voices were raised. And you get 8 minutes of time to tell your story. And as you tell your story, even with all the gaps and holes in it, nobody's going to question it. There's not even a need to bring the producer that you claim was sitting next to you. I'm not saying she's selling, but the producer that was sitting next to you, you don't even have to name the producer. You could just say my producer.
I mean, I hadn't even thought about it from that angle, but I can't argue your point. I will say this, given the moron that just left office,
Mhm.
there is a palpable fear to be Asian right now. And then it's a throwback to October 2001. If you were Muslim, it was a palpable fear being Muslim in this country at that time. And rewind, as George Takai spoke about,
There,
after World War II, if
there
you
were
were
bombings,
Japanese,
but I'm sorry, I didn't mean to, but with that Muslim fear, there were attacks against Muslim, major attacks against Muslim establishments. We had tons and tons of video. I mean, we had tons of events that we saw, we could see. I'm just, and again, I am not anti-Asian at all. I have in fact, I'm going to go ahead and say this. I love me some Korean men. I think they're very handsome people. I mean, I'm just being very honest. Aesthetically, I recognize beauty wherever it is. I think, I recognize aesthetically the beauty of a, I think the culture is fascinating. I'm not anti, I just want to say that. But with all of that, I'm still going to tell the truth. I just, I'm just not understanding what I'm seeing. But now what I tell you is happening, that I see that there's a political movement happening around this notion that Asians are being attacked. And there's a lot of, we want more recognition.
Hmm.
We want, and again, I can't tell you
Right.
what's what, but
'Cause
this is starting to now become a narrative that's turning to a political movement, and it's getting a lot of traction. And I, I'm just
that would
with,
be really disappointing.
I just am curious to whether this urgency is really matched by is the response accurate to what we're actually saying, because I saw something that said the numbers for violence against Asians have increased 867%. If I had three, let's say if I started with three and I increased by 867%, I'm looking at 26. So, not saying that that's not important, but I'm also measuring crime overall for 2020.
Right.
I'm also measuring how low the bar has to be before something is considered an attack. Shunning, I don't, I just
Like I
don't,
don't even like how do you like yeah, that's just a weird one. Like, how do you even report that? Like, I was outside. I think this dude ignored me because I was Asian.
8 minutes of time because you were uncomfortable in an airport because two men said something to you that never escalated to voice raising or back and forth.
Right. And like I said, I think the difference, and I think this also needs to be pointed out, the difference in this is you and I having this conversation is going to be different from two Latinos having this conversation. It's going to be different from, you know, too
The
many other ethnicities, but
perception, yeah,
right.
perception.
Because you and I are black people in this country, again, our definition of racist attack is so much different than because when I like I said, when I saw the headline, three racist attacks in 1 hour, I'm like,
I
God
got, I
damn.
was nervous, like
Like,
before I
oh shit.
started, I was like, oh my God, what
I'm
happened?
expecting her to be in bandages and a cast because that's sadly that's the trauma that I've lived. That's when we see racist attack as black people, it's Rodney King at the hands at merciless hands at LAPD. That's a racist attack. It's Ahmaud Arbery. That's a racist attack for us.
And
It
you
is
don't,
not disqualifying what she's saying. It's just when you are speaking to when black people hear that, it registers differently.
it registers differently because our experience is different. And to think we got to march, we got to beg, we got to get behind, we got to ignore the fact that Stacey Abrams didn't get the vote she didn't get the position she should have gotten, and she still got to vote and rattle the groups around the next candidate and all that to even get some attention. And you can be shunned and be a different person of color, and a whole task force and executive order gets written for you. We
I'm
done
gonna
marched,
tell you,
we done, we got films of people being killed. We've got evidence of other people of color, including Asians, participating in racism against us that I could go into story on. I'm not even going there with that. The decades and decades of racist behavior from salon owners and people who own businesses against Black people, and they're in Black communities.
the
And we
LA
got to
riots in
prove,
'92.
we got to beg, we got to prove, we got to vote in, we got to, we fighting each other about mission state. I mean, all this kind of stuff, and yet you could be shunned and have and you get and I'm
I'm gonna take an optimistic standpoint, and I'm gonna say, hey, because ultimately how I see this, right, is we have a common enemy in the sense of all of us. non-whites, blacks, particularly in this country, we have a common enemy known as white supremacy. And it doesn't make it better if follow the analogy here, it doesn't make it better if the hammer is hitting you harder than it's hitting me at the moment. We still have a common enemy. So from an optimistic standpoint, I am hoping our Asian American brothers and sisters understand now the value of we need to be as united as we possibly can. I don't even know exactly what that looks like, but look, you're catching hell. We've always caught hell. How do we band together so that hell ain't so hot? That's a wish, though. That's a wish, and it hasn't played out in real life, but that's a wish. You get a little taste of what we got. Let's figure out how we fight this thing together.
I think first we need to address the fact that their community participates in it. And it's something that this isn't the first time of me saying it, and that's why I'm hesitant about jumping on this hashtag. I was hesitant about having this conversation. I'm going to say this again to the audience. I was very hesitant about having this conversation. In fact, you and I have been discussing this offline for a long time about whether we should even broach the subject. But we are honest on this show. I don't have an end all be all for how I totally feel about this or what needs to happen. The information that I'm talking about today is what it is. It is what it is. And I just have to say, we're talking about it because we talk about difficult and uncomfortable things here. And this is one of those things that's been on my mind and on yours too. And as the stories keep coming out, my fear is, and I'm not sure it's happening, but I'm wondering, I'm noticing that when we talk about these crimes against Asians, we're not talking about who is committing the crimes.
That can be good or bad.
That can be good or bad. And I think that that's important to know, because if there's a high percentage of crimes that are happening against Asians, and certain groups are committing the crime, we need to know. But my fear in that is that folks that look like us are going to start getting scapegoated into being,
right,
the attackers. And I don't know that that's necessarily true. And so I'm looking at this and I'm paying attention, but I am also a bit concerned about how quickly we get on these bandwagons. We, meaning African Americans, that we've jumped on this, and we're here's the hashtag, and we're jumping on the hashtag, and we don't ask enough questions. But this is our behavior anyway. We jump on the forgiveness bandwagon, and you see Amy Cooper benefited greatly from that. And then we're mad when we don't get justice. And then we'll be mad when in the next year, we'll see all of these programs that go into place for the Asian American community. And we're still going, hey, we still trying to lift every voice.
Right.
Because history has been what it's been. I mean, we just talked about what happens generally, how gentrification and we're going to better the schools, what that means and what it's looked like. And I'm really concerned about what is happening with this particular, this kind of new trend, media trend, and talking about violence against Asians and what that means to the African American community. What price we pay for that, because we pay for it because resources that get allocated to people of color. And here we are with the gap.
It's a little bit of this and that. Right. All right. Give me 2 seconds. You keep talking. For transparency here. I'm low on energy. So you keep talking. I'm gonna clear my video for like 2 seconds and plug my juice in because my phone's gonna die.
Oh Lord.
But I can still hear you though. I can still hear you. Keep talking.
I'm gonna keep talking to the people.
Yeah, because I can still hear you.
I'm just gonna keep talking to the people. Well, this is
I can still hear you. Keep talking.
This is just what happens with technology. The co-host phone is getting ready to die. He has to get offline for a minute. And
No,
I said,
absolutely.
hey, have to keep on going. But I mean, the conversation, good people, as Ross gets it together again. This is the beginning of a dialogue, and we're going to continue to watch, right, Ross? We're going to continue to watch and see what happens as this
I'm
continues to unfold. And
here's how this I was
okay,
gonna say this weird thing is here's how I'm hoping this goes. It
okay.
goes away because the problem is gonna become
Ooh, okay. You know somebody just that just went real xenophobic for somebody. It just
yeah.
goes away.
No. Here's
Go
what I mean. I hope it goes away in the sense of because the next level up is well, now we do see buildings burning and things of that nature. So I'm
ahead.
hoping this all
Right,
just goes
right,
away and it's like,
right.
oh, everything's cool.
Right. Right. I don't want it to escalate. And I did not mean to suggest that we
Yeah,
I wanted to no, not at all. Um,
right.
definitely not that.
Yeah.
But that
That's what
has
I'm hoping. That's what I
been
mean by goes away.
right. But that has when you talked about Islamophobia and phobia against Muslims, that's the level that we've seen. Even when you talk about groups like Jewish folks, when there are attacks on those communities, we're not just saying somebody said, "Oh, do you have a Quran or something?" I mean, it's been very definitively violent acts, very
Right.
definitively acts that have been you undoubtedly racist. And I don't know if someone
If
asked
that's
me
what we
if
have
you
here.
speak English should have garnered eight
I
minutes
mean,
on.
it definitely falls under racist asshole, but
It
you
just
know,
may be asshole. I mean, but it's hard to measure that without
given,
full
yeah,
disclosure. Without your back, you're there. Okay,
oh yeah,
without knowing, with so many details being missing. So, you know, we just opened up a can of worms. Somebody's gonna be mad. You know,
I mean, if you're gonna be mad,
it-
it's because if you're gonna be mad, it's because you're not really totally listening. Because as I said, I'm hoping for, and I'm speaking for myself here. I
okay.
believe the race discussion is a smaller discussion of a much larger piece of the puzzle. And you and I have talked about this. I believe in a lot of ways, America has a class problem disguised as a race problem.
Mm,
And we keep dinging black versus white. Now it's Asian. Now it's like, listen, 99% is still run by 1%. There is no reason for anyone in this country to be hungry or homeless. We have the resources to make it happen. But we keep getting stuck on, as black people, we still fighting the fight our ancestors fought in the 50s. We are still dealing with Trump supporters and so on and so forth that believe a certain mindset. I'm like, you got to understand something here. We have a common enemy. If you're because right now, if you're at a certain income bracket, this is not black or white. You may not get a check. It's not
mm.
black or white. This is income that says you might get a stimulus package, you might not.
Well, but I cannot let that pass without
Mhm,
addressing the fact that even though we could say we have a common enemy,
mhm.
other people of color participate on some level in white supremacy in their violence, their hatred, and their racism against Black people. We have
Absolutely.
been everybody's victim.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that there aren't incidents where Black people have attacked other people. That happens. I'm talking about generally when we talk about racism and how racism works. There seems to be this idea from other persons of color that when they can, they participate as honorary white people in racism against Black people. Um, and again, I am not anti Asian. I am not. I appreciate the Asian culture and community, and I understand it is a diverse and large group. However, collectively, Asians have been silent generally. Because somebody will say, "Well, I was such and such," and generally your group has been silent if you're Asian on racism against Black people. I didn't hear a
Mhm.
whole lot of fussing and a whole lot of talk in the Asian community. When we saw that George Floyd murder and you saw that Asian officer standing guard, basically protecting George Floyd as he killed, excuse me, Chauvin as he killed George Floyd. I don't see it across the board when these acts happen.
Right.
And I know what has gone on in Black communities with Asian businesses being there and the problems that have happened. So the relationship has been a sensitive one anyway.
Mhm.
And I think I'm saying all of this to say that in 2021, we are more aware. A lot of us are more aware of how these
Right.
things go. We know historically how things have gone. We are on alert now. We are on alert. There are a lot of us who are on alert, who are watching this and seeing it differently. I know what the news media says. I know what the executive orders are saying. I know people, Black folks, there's a lot of us jumping on the hashtag, getting involved probably way too soon before we should. Some of us are just going, hold up. We got to watch this thing a little bit longer. That's all. And this is the conversation starter. For some of you who have not had the conversation or have not thought this far ahead, think about it. That's all.
All right.
Was that diplomatic enough? I thought it was.
Yeah, it definitely makes the point. Like I said, listen and understand. But oh,
Somebody's gonna be mad. You know somebody.
and I think if someone's gonna be mad, I think it's because they you want to be mad. Honestly, I think if you're mad, it's because you want to be mad because you don't want to absorb what's being said here. That's that.
Okay, Ross Cooper with the baby face. I'm hearing you. Okay. I'm with you though, brother. I like to add a little levity, but I'm with you. And a little extra in my coffee cup was helpful too. I'm covering up the mug because it's a Christmas mug, but
Goodness gracious, man! I just got good old ginger beer. I love me some ginger beer.
that's
But
good too.
yeah, that's all I got.
That's all I got too. That's all I got. We're gonna watch this and see what happens. And
Okay.
all right, I think that's enough show for the people.
Yes.
I
Yes.
think it is. All right, Ross Cooper. Well, I will see you next time, and we'll see you all next time, or you'll hear us next time if you're listening on an audio platform. And listen, if no one's told you today, I want to tell you we love you and we want the best for you. Thank you for tuning in again. We'll see you next time. Wait, where you know, I'm on 22 on this. We will see you, the audience, or or you'll hear us. You know what? Let me just give it up. Okay, till next time. Ross, say goodbye to the people.
Peace.
Okay, we're still running. Bye bye.